Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Imagine this. It's a cold December morning in Midtown Manhattan, 2024. The streets are already busy as thousands of people rush to work, taxis weave through traffic, and the city moves at its usual fast pace. Among the crowd is Brian Thompson, the 50-year-old CEO of UnitedHealthcare. He's in New York to attend an important investor meeting, a routine part of his job. As he steps out of his hotel and begins walking toward the venue, nothing appears unusual. To everyone around him, it's just another ordinary business morning. But within moments, that ordinary walk will turn into one of the most shocking and widely discussed crimes in recent American history. Suddenly, everything changes in just a matter of seconds. According to investigators, a masked man wearing a dark hoodie quietly approaches Brian Thompson from behind. Without saying a word, the attacker allegedly raises a handgun fitted with a suppressor and opens fire. The first shot strikes Thompson in the back. A second shot hits his leg, sending him crashing onto the sidewalk. Panic erupts instantly as nearby pedestrians freeze in shock, while others run for cover or call for emergency help. But what makes the attack even more chilling is the gunman's behavior afterward. Instead of running in panic, he appears remarkably calm. Surveillance footage reviewed by investigators reportedly shows the suspect walking away from the scene at a steady pace, as if nothing had happened. Moments later, he gets onto a bicycle and rides toward Central Park, disappearing before police can reach the scene. In less than a minute, the attacker is gone, leaving behind a crime scene that would soon capture the attention of the entire nation. In just a few seconds, one of the most powerful executives in the American health insurance industry had been fatally shot in the middle of one of the busiest cities in the world. The attack stunned investigators, business leaders, and the public alike. A high-profile CEO had been targeted in broad daylight, in a location filled with people and surveillance cameras. As news of the killing spread, authorities launched an intensive investigation to identify the person responsible. Within days, attention turned to a 26-year-old man named Luigi Mangione. Prosecutors allege that he was the gunman behind the attack and accuse him of carrying out a carefully planned assassination. Mangione, however, has pleaded not guilty to the charges, and the allegations against him remain the subject of ongoing court proceedings. As investigators continued to piece together the evidence, the case quickly grew beyond a single homicide investigation and became one of the most closely watched criminal cases in the United States. Now, let's go through the full story and examine what investigators say happened that morning. According to the investigation, the shooting took place on the 4th of December, 2024, just outside the New York Hilton Midtown, where Brian Thompson had been staying before an investor event. The location was surrounded by hotels, businesses, and busy city streets, meaning there were numerous surveillance cameras in the area. Those cameras became one of the first major sources of evidence for detectives. Investigators say the footage captured the suspect approaching Thompson, carrying out the attack, and then leaving the scene before disappearing on a bicycle. Prosecutors further allege that the weapon used was a 3D, printed 9mm ghost gun fitted with a suppressor, a firearm that, according to investigators, lacked a traditional serial number, making it more difficult to trace. Another detail that immediately caught investigators' attention was the shell casings recovered at the scene. According to police, they were engraved with the words delay, deny, depose. Investigators believe the phrase was intended as a symbolic message criticizing practices often associated with parts of the health insurance industry, particularly allegations of delaying or denying insurance claims. That unusual detail quickly became one of the most discussed pieces of evidence in the case and fueled nationwide debate about whether the attack was intended not only to target an individual, but also to make a broader ideological statement. For the next several days, investigators worked around the clock, following surveillance footage, analyzing forensic evidence, and tracking leads across multiple states. Then, on the 9th of December, 2024, just 5 days after the shooting, the investigation took a dramatic turn. According to authorities, Luigi Mangione was located inside a McDonald's restaurant in Altoona, Pennsylvania, more than 200 miles from New York City. Police allege that he was carrying and presenting a fake identification card when officers approached him. After taking him into custody, investigators searched his belongings. Prosecutors say the backpack contained several items they believe are significant to the case, including what they allege was the 3D printed 9mm pistol equipped with a suppressor used in the shooting, multiple fake identity documents, and thousands of dollars in cash. However, one item drew particular attention from investigators: a handwritten notebook. According to prosecutors, the notebook contained writings that they believe shed light on the suspect's alleged thinking and planning before the attack. Investigators would later describe this notebook as one of the most important pieces of evidence in the case. Mangione has pleaded not guilty, and his defense has challenged aspects of the evidence as the criminal proceedings continue. According to prosecutors, the handwritten notebook became one of the strongest pieces of evidence they intended to present in court. They allege that its pages contained detailed writings expressing deep anger toward what the author described as a greed-fueled health insurance cartel. Prosecutors also allege that the notebook included favorable references to the ideas of the Unabomber Ted Kaczynski, a convicted domestic terrorist, which they argue reflected the suspect's alleged mindset. In addition, prosecutors claim the writings discuss the idea of targeting high-profile corporate executives as a way to send a broader message rather than acting out of a personal dispute. Beyond the notebook itself, investigators allege that the attack was not spontaneous. They contend that it was planned over the course of several months. According to the prosecution, Mangione traveled to New York before the shooting, checked into hostels using fake identities, and spent time observing the area where Brian Thompson was expected to appear. Investigators further allege that surveillance of the location took place the night before the shooting, suggesting what they describe as careful preparation. Mangione has pleaded not guilty, and these allegations remain matters for the court to determine during the upcoming trial. As investigators continued building their case, they also looked into Luigi Mangione's background to better understand what may have led up to the alleged attack. Public records indicate that Mangione came from a financially comfortable family in Maryland and had access to opportunities that many people do not. According to reports, he had suffered a serious back injury several years earlier, leaving him with chronic pain and, prosecutors allege, growing frustration with aspects of the American healthcare system. However, investigators have also stated that he was not a UnitedHealthcare customer, making the case more complex than a dispute over a personal insurance claim. Prosecutors argue that Brian Thompson was allegedly chosen not because of any direct relationship with Mangione, but because of his position as the CEO of one of the nation's largest health insurance companies. In the prosecution's view, Thompson represented a symbol of the broader healthcare industry that the suspect allegedly blamed for systemic problems. The defense, meanwhile, disputes the prosecution's interpretation of the evidence, and those competing arguments will ultimately be evaluated in court. This distinction is one reason why the case has attracted such intense national attention, not only because of the victim's prominent role, but also because of the alleged motive behind the attack. As news of the arrest spread, the case quickly grew far beyond a criminal investigation. It became the center of a nationwide debate about healthcare, corporate responsibility, and public frustration. Many Americans were horrified by the killing, describing it as a deliberate and senseless act of violence that should be condemned regardless of the motive. At the same time, however, social media revealed a very different reaction from some users. Posts, memes, and online discussions rapidly went viral, with some people portraying Mangione as a vigilante figure rather than simply focusing on the criminal charges against him. Some users even wrote comments suggesting that he had acted against an industry they believed had treated patients unfairly. Those reactions reflected anger over issues such as denied insurance claims, rising healthcare costs, and concerns about corporate practices. At the same time, many others strongly rejected those views, arguing that personal frustration with any system can never justify violence or the taking of a human life. The case exposed a sharp divide in public opinion, showing how deeply emotional and controversial the topic of healthcare has become in the United States. What began as a high-profile homicide investigation soon evolved into a broader national conversation about justice, accountability, and the challenges facing the American healthcare system. As the investigation moved into the courtroom, the focus shifted from the crime itself to the legal battle that will determine what actually happened and whether prosecutors can prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. Luigi Mangione has pleaded not guilty to all charges, meaning he denies the allegations and is presumed innocent unless proven guilty in court. He is facing state murder charges in New York, where the main criminal trial is currently scheduled to begin on the 8th of September, 2026. In addition to the state case, he also faces a separate federal case, including stalking-related charges connected to the investigation, with those proceedings currently scheduled for January 2027. As the case has progressed, both the prosecution and the defense have filed numerous legal motions, arguing over evidence and procedure. The potential for the death penalty, which had been discussed earlier in the case, is no longer expected to be part of the proceedings after certain charges were dismissed, according to the information presented in this case. With multiple court hearings still ahead, the outcome now depends on what evidence is admitted, how witnesses testify, and ultimately how a jury evaluates the facts presented during trial. As both sides prepare for trial, one of the biggest legal battles has centered on the evidence itself. Defense attorneys have challenged the way police conducted parts of the search after Mangione's arrest, arguing that some items were obtained improperly. As a result, the court ruled that certain evidence recovered from his backpack would not be admitted because of legal issues surrounding the search. However, prosecutors have indicated that other key pieces of evidence, including the alleged murder weapon and the handwritten notebook, are still expected to play a central role during the trial. Exactly how that evidence is interpreted and how much weight the jury gives it will be critical to the outcome of the case. But this story has grown into something much larger than a single criminal prosecution. It has become a symbol of a much deeper national debate about the American healthcare system. For many people, the case reflects years of frustration over rising medical costs, denied insurance claims, and concerns about corporate practices. At the same time, many others argue that no level of dissatisfaction with a system can ever justify violence against another person. Those competing viewpoints have made this one of the most polarizing criminal cases in recent years. Prosecutors allege that Luigi Mangione deliberately carried out a planned attack, His defense rejects those allegations, and it will ultimately be up to a jury, not public opinion or social media, to determine the facts. Until then, one question continues to divide the nation. Is this simply the prosecution of a man accused of committing a calculated murder, or has the case also become a reflection of broader public frustration with the healthcare system? The answer to the criminal charges will be decided in court, but the larger debate surrounding healthcare in America is likely to continue long after the verdict is reached. As of July 2026, both criminal cases are moving closer to trial, and the attention surrounding them has only continued to grow. Prosecutors are preparing to present their evidence, while the defense is expected to challenge the prosecution's case on multiple fronts. The upcoming court proceedings will determine whether the allegations can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Until a verdict is reached, Luigi Mangione remains presumed innocent under the law, despite the intense public attention the case has received. Whatever the final outcome, the trials are expected to be among the most closely watched criminal proceedings in the United States, with legal experts, journalists, and millions of people following every development. Looking back, this case has all the elements of a story that captured national attention: the fatal shooting of a high-profile executive in broad daylight, an interstate manhunt that ended just days later, controversial evidence that has sparked intense courtroom battles, and a public reaction unlike almost any other recent criminal case. Yet beyond the headlines, it has also forced difficult conversations about violence, justice, corporate responsibility, and the frustrations many Americans feel toward the healthcare system. The courts will decide the criminal charges, but the broader debate surrounding this case is likely to continue for years to come. As new evidence is presented and the trials move forward, the full legal story is still being written. We'll continue following every major development. Thanks for watching, and if you found this breakdown informative, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more in-depth true